We have quite a packed audience here in the room and some 100 people online through the live stream. So thank you very much for joining us. And allow me just to walk you through the program and some housekeeping rules before I introduce you to the host of this event, Ambassador Elisabeth Kornfeind, who will deliver the welcome remarks. So we've got quite a packed agenda, lots of eminent keynote speakers, which I will be introducing in a minute. So we've got 3 introductory keynote speeches, followed by an interactive panel, very eminent panelists, very happy and thank you for coming. Followed by an interactive panel, as I said, and we're going to open up also for a Q&A session. And at the end, we will warmly invite you to join us for a cocktail where we can continue our discussion and from networking and mingling. So just for you to know, this event, as I said, will be live streamed, will be recorded, and the recordings will be then available on the Foreign Ministry's YouTube channel. We will notify once it is available online. So, without further ado, let's start. I take great pleasure in introducing Ambassador Elisabeth Kornfeind. She's the Director General for Europe and Economic Affairs, and she will, as I said, deliver the welcome remarks. She will respond to 3 very pertinent questions: why tech diplomacy, why quantum, and why the Austrian Foreign Ministry? Ambassador, you've got the floor.
Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear partners, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon and a warm Grüß Gott to all of you gathered here today in the beautiful Alois Mock Saal. It is the Alois Mock Saal, but I'm always very happy to see the panelists sitting below Maria Theresia. And thank you for joining us online, and also those here in the room for our kickoff event of another tech diplomacy talk series called Beyond the Digital Age: Dimensions of Tech Diplomacy in a Quantum World. It is a special privilege to welcome today's distinguished group of scientists, researchers, policymakers, representatives of the industry, and experts to discuss one of the most transformative developments of our time, quantum technology, and its implications for our societies, for international relations, and for diplomacy. We embark on this conversation under the auspices of the United Nations International Year of Quantum Science and Technology 2025. Emerging technologies such as quantum artificial intelligence are reshaping our geopolitical, economic, and security landscapes, presenting both unprecedented opportunities but also complex challenges. And quantum technology stands on the forefront of this transformation. Its potential to revolutionize computing, sensing, communication, and different sectors such as chemistry and material science is matched by the risks it can pose, societal, ethical, security, and its implications it can have on international cooperation, multilateralism, and governance. At the Austrian Foreign Ministry, Austrian Ministry for International and European Affairs, I should say, we recognize that diplomacy must evolve and be capable of anticipating and responding to this era of profound technological change. This is why we have embarked through working to build capacities within the ministry, but also outside with our embassies abroad, to build all the capacities we need within this ministry and to create interdisciplinary dialogue, to foster a better understanding and develop strategies that will enable Austria, but also Austria as a member of the European Union and Europe, to navigate these complex landscapes responsively and effectively. This year, following the UN International Year of Quantum Science and Technology, we intend to launch different talks under the title Beyond the Digital Age: Dimensions of Tech Diplomacy in a Quantum World, which aims to provide a platform for analysis and discussion of the multiple dimensions of quantum technologies from a foreign policy perspective. Today's session is a kickoff start and shall set the stage for the deeper discussions that should follow. Over the course of this international year, quantum science and technology will examine, we want to examine the critical dimensions quantum technologies can pose, including security implications, transformative industrial potential, geoeconomic and trade-related questions, including economic security, market development, ethics, and government frameworks. In doing so, we aim to address the following essential questions. How can Austria and Europe remain competitive and resilient in the quantum age? How can we strike a balance between international cooperation and the need for technological protection in an era of rising geopolitical tensions? And finally, what principles should guide the ethical and inclusive development of quantum technologies to ensure they contribute to the global challenges and the achievement of sustainable development goals? We are very grateful to our partners, first and foremost, Quantum Austria, the Austrian Excellent Cluster on Quantum Science, and the Innsbruck Quantum Ethics Lab for their invaluable contributions to this initiative. Together, we aspire to build capacity, foster partnerships, and position Austria as a trusted partner in the global discourse on quantum governance and diplomacy. Thank you, especially Professor Weiss and Professor Kettemann, for being with us here today. Let me also express my gratitude to our esteemed keynote speakers and the panelists. Claudia introduced them already, whose expertise will guide us through today's discussions. Finally, let me invite all participants, the ones in the room, the ones online, to engage actively in today's discussion. It is through your insight and through your questions that we build up our understanding and explore the multidimensional impact of quantum technologies on our societies and the world at large. Not to acquire perfect knowledge, we know this is impossible, especially as diplomats, and to prevent everything and predict everything, but to be able to build up the necessary resilience and adaptability. Let me finally thank Claudia Reinbrecht for organizing this event, today's and the series that's to come. And with that, I wish you a very fruitful and inspiring session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your welcome remarks. And then I'll take great pleasure in introducing Professor Weiss. Professor Weiss will provide us with an introduction to the Austrian quantum ecosystem. Professor Weiss is, you're at the podium, yes. Professor Weiss is Vice Rector of the University of Innsbruck, one of Austria's foremost quantum physicists, expert in photonics, but also head of the Austrian Cluster of Excellence on Quantum Science Austria, who's a partner of our series. Thank you very much for partnering up. And now, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Claudia. And thank you very much, Ambassador Kornfeind, for hosting this event here in the ministry. In fact, for quite a while, we've been in discussions with Matthias Kettemann, foremost, and Claudia, on how to expand this ecosystem that I'm going to try to introduce a little bit to include ethical and legal questions. I will start with math because, of course, your math classes have been long ago, just to set the tone here. So there are easy mathematical problems and there are hard mathematical problems. Those are not necessarily the easy and hard ones that you found easy and hard at school, but if you ask a computer or a person to find the 2 prime factors that make up 15, they will probably answer you immediately. But if you make this product 143, it's a little more complicated. You can still do this. If you try to solve this one, you will probably not finish in a day. In fact, the computer can solve this one reasonably quickly. But, and here I'll give you the solutions. Did you know that our entire internet security today rests on the hardness of this problem, which is unproven? So there's no proof that this is a hard problem. We only think it's a hard problem. And I went to this ministry's website, and nobody ever does this, but you can click on this lock icon near the top, and it says this is secure, connection is secure. You can click a little more into it. I can't really point, unfortunately, and you can look at the certificate that tells you that what you're reading actually came from a website by this name and was not spoofed by a man in the middle or person in the middle. And in fact, so I'll probably go there. Sorry, I can't point. What you would need to factor is this number here. Perfect. Which has 4,096 bits. So that's about 1,200 decimal digits, 1,200 digit number. And to factor this is considered so difficult or so lengthy that no computer on Earth would be able to factorize this in our lifetime or probably even longer. Okay? Okay, so we seem safe, but we're not. Why is this? I'll switch over here. This is because information is physical. That's a statement by Rolf Landauer, physicist at IBM most of his time. In a classical computer, we represent information by bits. They're like switches. They can be off or on, and you know that you shouldn't try to hold the switch in the middle. It's bad for it. In the quantum computer, we represent information by also something like that. It's qubits. We write them with these pointy brackets, which is just to remember that they're a bit different. And the thing is, they could be the direction of polarization of a photon, so the direction of oscillation of light, or the energy level of an electron in an atom, or many other things, in fact. And now it turns out that for these qubits, they can be simultaneously in 0 and 1. In fact, there's a whole continuum of states that is possible, which doesn't mean that it's now has infinite information capacity. It can do a lot of things. If you ask it a question, you only get one answer. So the trick is to figure out smart questions to ask it. And but one way of seeing that there's a lot of power behind this is if you try to simulate quantum physics. If you take one qubit and represent it by two floating point numbers, that costs you 128 bits. If you take 2, then it's 256, no surprise here. If you take 3, it's not 6, but it's 8, so that's 1,000 bits, roughly. If you take 24 qubits, you need 10 gigabytes of memory only to represent the state of those 10 qubits in full. If you try to do processing on them, it's even more work. So it turns out it's very difficult to simulate quantum physics. And then people came up with ideas that show us that one can turn this around and use this information capacity and processing capacity to do some things very fast. Not everything is going to be advanced by quantum computers, and this is the basis for the quantum computers. There's only a few things so far known. One of them is the factoring thing, and this is why people are nervous. Cryptography people are nervous. They've been trying to find replacements. It's not totally sure whether these replacements will work, but there is a hypothesis that they might. One can search in unsorted databases quite efficiently. One can do optimization problems, which are a big thing in many areas of life. The other thing is that we can, with quantum computers or controlled quantum systems, simulate real quantum systems. Simulate, for example, materials that we might have a hard time calculating otherwise, or even trying out. You know, if you need to simulate a vast series of materials with different composition, you cannot cook up 1,000 different variants of a certain compound. Drugs, catalysts for low energy production of chemicals, fertilizers, whatsoever. These are the things that are believed to be possible on quantum computers. Now, this, of course, has triggered a kind of, I would say, arms race, but a technology race around the world. This is 2024 with a global quantum effort, and this is public money. This does not count private investments, as far as I remember, of $42 billion. Austria is not doing too badly in there. Can't find it right now, but oh yeah, this is actually the Quantum Austria money, not our cluster of excellence, but the Ministry of Science and Education. Okay, and this is a hopelessly outdated. These are some of the big names and some of the 2 Austrian names that actually make quantum hardware. You know these names, but there are really hundreds, if not thousands, of startup companies worldwide that do this. And I will just give you a quick overview of what's in Austria. There is, as far as I counted, and this is hard, 9 quantum companies, perhaps more. And then also important are other organizations, AIT. We have a number of representatives here today. Silicon Austria Labs, Photonics Austria, that do the translational research and also a lot of the networking and coordination of projects. And then, of course, the funders for the research side and also the translational research, FWF, FFG, and AWS, Austria Wirtschaftsservice, mostly. So this is sort of the ecosystem, and I could tell you a bit about what all of these do, but it's going to take too long. I still want to take a minute to speak about our cluster of excellence, and that one goes back to Schrödinger's cat. This is a very nice illustration by graphic designer Harald Ritsch, who does many, many quantum illustrations. If you happen to need one, ask him. You see this cat that is both dead and alive, which is the prototypical example for the perceived weirdness of quantum physics, that things can be in 2 states at once. It also is supposed to exemplify that things get entangled. So in this case, if the atom, the radioactive atom that triggers the mechanism that kills the cat, decays, then its state becomes entangled with the state of the cat. It's also exemplifying that we never see a half alive and dead cat in life, in nature. So somehow there's a question, does this apply to the macroscopic world or does it not? And from this, and from the fact that Austria has been pioneering quantum science, we've grouped the research in QuantA, or Quantum Science Austria, by the questions of what is the role of entanglement, for which Anton Zeilinger received the Nobel Prize in 2022, in 3 different domains. One is gravity, and that's an extremely interesting topic, fundamental topic, perhaps not for quantum technologies, but we will see. Then, of course, in information, and we're thinking about things that go beyond what we know now about quantum computing, and in matter. And this is the question of how do materials get their properties? How can we understand materials that do not just rely on single electrons doing their job, but where electrons function together in a way, in entangled states again. And here's a short list of Austrian quantum discoveries, and these are not the old ones. These are since sort of the entanglement. And very often when we are abroad, and this is now interesting for the ministry, it is recognized that Austria has had a really pivotal role in quantum science, and I think we should keep this up, and this is what our cluster of excellence is about. Now, it's led by this board of directors of 8 people, but they only represent a much larger number of people spread across Austria between Innsbruck, Linz, and Vienna with 6 institutions. And here are the 67 quantum group leaders at these institutions. And now you imagine 10 people behind every face here, and you see that just the scientific part, and I'm not talking about the corporate world, there's no AIT here and no, so it is huge given the size of our country. And this is not only potential for new scientific discoveries, it also means that we are creating a lot of the new workforce that is powering all these companies. Yeah? They go out into the world, they work in our quantum startups, I think it's a really good time to be in this field. And one component, the Cluster of Excellence has many components, but one is that it's supposed to not only be a research thing, but it's supposed to have an outreach program for all kinds of stakeholders. And this is in fact exactly what we will do now in the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology that was already alluded to before. And we have the pleasure to host the website quantum2025.at. In fact, in almost every country in the world, you have that website, which then tells you about all the events and things that are happening in this year. And I'm inviting all of you here and remotely to join us in this quantum year, celebrating the 100th anniversary of the discovery of Schrödinger's equation and Heisenberg's version of quantum mechanics in 2025-26. One can discuss a little bit exactly which days it were, but that's not so important. I think we have a fantastic situation, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussions later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Weiss, and thank you for pointing out how great Austria is. That goes to the guests that we have from the Corps Diplomatique. I see the ambassador of Sweden, former colleague, thanks for joining us, but many more here. So I take now great pride in introducing to you Professor Tommaso Calarco, who's joining us online. One can truly say that Professor Calarco, who's the mastermind behind the Quantum Manifesto, who then led to the establishment of the quantum flagship of the European Union, is Mr. Quantum Europe, the shepherd of the European quantum ecosystem. Of course, he's also one of the most eminent quantum physicists worldwide, with professorships in Bologna, Cologne, and also at the Forschungszentrum Jülich, where you're doing great things, which we might be talking about later. But first, I'm very curious about what you can tell us about the European quantum ecosystem, and to put it in a geopolitical context, because what we want to hear is not sort of an inward-looking perspective, but where do we stand in the world? What do we need to even get better, or at least not to get put to the side? How do you see these things? Thank you very much for joining us. The floor, Professor Calarco, is now yours. It takes a few seconds because we have a bit of a latency here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reinprecht, Your Excellencies, dear guests, dear colleagues. It is a great honor and pleasure and a special excitement from my side to be present here today, because it's not only science and technology which moves us, but really how we will be able to get this progress integrated into society in a way which is for the benefit, really, of humankind. And I see this as actually one of the first very serious attempts to move in that direction, and I can assure you that our whole scientific and technological community is very, very keen in participating to that. So let me show you my presentation here. I think that you can see my screen. And so now, without further ado, I can just go a little bit forward for explaining a little bit. So this is the title I have been given, a very ambitious title, Research and Politics on Quantum in Europe. Where do we stand? And actually, so I will not, of course, after the excellent introduction by Gregor Weiss, explain what quantum technologies are, but just say, what we are trying to do at EU level. And really, this is really the first slide that I typically have when I introduce the flagship. And today, when I was preparing the talk, I realized that this is really a very geopolitical slide, as a matter of fact, because it says that among our first goals, it is really to make Europe an attractive region worldwide. in current words, we say we would like to make Europe the quantum valley of the world. And so this has a lot to do with, interaction with other areas and what is nowadays known as co-opetition, we can say. So here is my next slide, which is very dear to me and very appropriate to today's context, in the sense that, well, so what I am telling you now, I will improvise a little bit, okay? Because, I mean, you cannot have the visual support that I was preparing, but the main point I wanted to make is that, I was going to compare, actually, the results that we were promising in 2018 when we had the kickoff meeting of our flagship there in Vienna at the Wiener Hofburg, as a matter of fact. And so I had one slide there which showed what were the goals according to our strategic research agenda that was setting the stage for what we set out to achieve on a mid and long-term timescale. And as a matter of fact, when we had the mid-term evaluation of the flagship a couple of years ago, turns out that we in Europe managed not only to achieve most of the goals that we set out to achieve, for instance, in terms of secure communications on the way to a quantum secure internet, quantum simulators with orders of magnitude more precision than at the start, sensors, same thing. We went beyond what we were planning in several fields. For instance, we achieved, and this was achieved as a world first in Europe, quantum advantage with a quantum simulator, namely the ability to perform calculation and simulation of some material properties, actually not materials, but let's say material model properties, but in any case with a quantum device more powerfully than any classical supercomputer. So as a matter of fact, this is coming from a very broad process which has really a pan-European dimension in which we have involved all researchers, and both in academia and in industry, in defining what is it that we think is ambitious but also achievable. And in fact, when we went there at the midterm evaluation, we found out that, as I said, some of these goals had been surpassed. So, for instance, we started the European flagship without having essentially any startup doing quantum technologies and producing quantum computers in particular. And nowadays we are there with the European quantum computing and simulation infrastructure, which is leaning on the European joint undertaking for high performance computing. So there are 7 supercomputing centers across Europe, which are coming together, and they are using quantum machines as co-processors to their supercomputers to now go beyond what can be done by the 2 components alone. And again, there is a very important, again, geopolitical dimension here. First of all, because this is something which can only work in a European-wide infrastructure. So yes, the metaphor of a space race, which is often used, was mentioned before, and very correctly, Gregor Weiss said, I'm not speaking about a space race, because it's really not the case that we have, everybody sitting on their own rocket and shooting, and let's see who comes first to the moon or to Mars. But to put it in a way which Hartmut Neven, the head of the Quantum Artificial Intelligence Lab of Google, put it, it's really not like this. It's not like a space race. It's rather a race between humankind against nature, because the complexity of mastering this phenomena is so huge that no individual country, no individual company, no individual organization can master it. Of course, since we started the flagship, the geopolitical context has changed, and we don't have to go into details about that, because here I see the room full of professionals in that field, But one element which remains is that, this integration in Europe is producing something which is more than the sum of the parts. And I was given a testimony of this a couple of years ago at the US-Europe Transatlantic Big Science Conference, in which I was approached by the responsible person for quantum technologies in the Department of Energy in the US, and she told me, there is one thing which we are quite jealous that you have and we don't. Here in this country, in the US, we are very dependent on the offering of private companies for accessing quantum computers, such as Google, IBM, and so on. But we see that in Europe, via this infrastructure, you have managed to get a public offering which has open access. It is even connected, and this is something which I see as actually as an initiative of science diplomacy and technology diplomacy, indeed, in the Open Quantum Institute, which was started by the Geneva Science Diplomacy Anticipator and is now hosted by CERN, in which we provide some of these quantum computers as access even beyond the borders of Europe for countries in the global south to try to sort of attenuate the digital divide or the quantum divide that could arise. So these are really some unique features that we have in our ecosystem. And so it's an ecosystem which is taking shape next to the research component, in which we really stand at world level, looking, and cooperating, or we in a co-opetition, as we said, with our counterparts in other continents on the flagship proper, really also in these infrastructures in which we take the output, something which comes out of the lab, something which is already mature for commercial exploitation, and we deploy it for the benefit of society. What I mentioned before, the European infrastructure for quantum computing and simulation is one example of this. And there is also the European quantum communication infrastructure. And this is, again, for me, a Viennese story, okay? Because this really started, and it was really some kind of informal tech diplomacy, really, because when we had the kickoff of the flagship, we realized, and so the idea of let's go in the direction of some European infrastructure was looming around. And so we had I literally improvised. I took, trays from the buffet, and we went to an improvised room inside the Wiener Hofburg with a few state secretaries and directors general of a few major European countries, and of course, including Austria, which had the presidency of the Council of the European Union at the time. And this is where the decision was made, let's start with EuroQCI, which then led to a joint declaration and to the establishment of this infrastructure. So once again, this is something which has had its origin in a diplomatic dimension, and also the outcome is, of course, to position us as Europe in terms of, strategic, national and international, like European continental security, much more strongly than before. And this is now moving forward towards the field of gravimetry and so space gravimetry with an infrastructure which is being planned by the European Commission. And also in terms of industrialization, which is another very prominent dimension for, really moving forward in this direction with the Chips Act, which includes an article on quantum chips and all the activities in this direction, which are being brought forward hand in hand between our RTO, Research and Technology Organizations across Europe, together with the Quantum Industry Consortium, whose president is with you today, Laure Lebars, and will participate in the discussion afterwards. And indeed, this is, again, something which grew across Europe. We started, I would say, a few years later after the United States, which already had their Quantum Economy Development Consortium, QEDC, a few years before we started, but now really again. So we are sort of hand in hand, and there is also an international alliance of quantum industry consortia, which has been actually stimulated by QUIC, and which is moving forward also in that direction. So there are all these elements of the whole ecosystem. And actually, again, in a geopolitical dimension, I have had the privilege of doing demos of these technologies. So we had in 2021, at the G20 meeting in Trieste, the first live demonstration to the ministers of research and innovation of the quantum communication infrastructure across 3 different countries of the European Union. And the last summer at the G7 in Bologna, I had the privilege to demonstrate again, something transnational. This was, in that case, a quantum computer from a French startup and a quantum gravimeter from another French startup, which are going to be embodied in these infrastructures that we are having. So this is really something which is moving us forward. I see that, also due to the little glitch that we had, I am coming to the end of my 15 minutes. So I was going to conclude by saying some fresh news, which is actually the main reason why I'm not with you today. And always, my heart is broken when I have an opportunity to come to Vienna and I cannot. But I can tell you there was a good reason for this. I could not come because until late yesterday night, I have been in Brussels to discuss with the cabinet of Commissioner Virkkunen about the next steps. And so they confirmed to me, you know, now really it's a clear plan. We are going to have a quantum strategy declaration as Virkkunen announced. So there will be a communication from the Commission to the Parliament and the Council in the next spring. And then about quantum technologies, also with the sort of creation really of a general framework for the whole strategy at European level, together with member states. Unlike the typical process in which member states are consulted at the council level only after the trialogue, this time we are preparing this together with member states. The input is going to be given by all the delegations from all the ministries in Europe, and this is going to, you know, be merged in this quantum strategy. And then they also confirmed, so the person in charge in the cabinet confirmed to me that they are going to move within this year to starting to a kickstart of the process for a quantum act at European level. So really, there could be no better moment than this for this wonderful initiative that you, Claudia, have been starting and are pushing so strongly. Because, you know, the framework for a discussion at European level and also for, you know, identifying the right norms. So this Quantum Act will be a regulation, so with full legal force. Then this is really the right moment to bring it up because the Commission wants to start and end together with member states, hand in hand. So this is, I would say, a really bright horizon for geopolitical development of quantum technologies in our continent, and this is why it's very exciting and promising to have this kind of event taking place today.
Thank you so much, Professor Calarco, and thank you also for this wonderful outlook. Much deserved applause to you. There's a reason why I called you, Mr. Quantum Europe, the shepherd of the European quantum ecosystem, because you're really leading ahead. Very good news about quantum strategy. And I think this is a good point to now start our panel. And I would like to invite our panelists to come and join me here. And I will introduce you, and then we kick off the discussions right away. I hope that, Professor, please do have a seat. I do hope that Professor Calarco can stay with us and maybe also join in, because we really want to do this panel very interactively. So it's going to happen now as this. Oh, sorry. We're going to have I'll introduce each of the panelists. We'll start a discussion by pre-prepared questions, which should give an overview of the different dimensions that we have sort of defined, the dimensions from a foreign and security policy perspective, which is basically, and I'll introduce everybody properly, but just to start on the dimensions, which we're going to sort of give you an overview, and later on we'll have deep dives throughout the years, because as we explained, this is only the kickoff of a series of talks that dive into the multiple dimensions of quantum tech diplomacy, as we call it. So we've got the security dimensions with Colonel Daniel Hickes-Wurm, who's a senior advisor at the Austrian Foreign, not Austrian Foreign Ministry, Austrian Defense Ministry. We have the economic and industrial dimension, also in a way very much linked to the geoeconomic dimension, represented by the president of QUIC. It's been mentioned already, the Quantum Industry Consortium, Laure Le Bars, which is a wonderful Breton name that, as I learned today, and Francesca Ferlaino, who is, you should know, been voted the Austrian of the Year 2024, which is quite a feat for an Italian. And she's also a quite foremost quantum physicist at the University of Innsbruck, representing sort of the science, but also sort of the ecosystem community management side. And to my left, I have Professor Schmidmayr, also one of Austria's foremost quantum physicists. He's also a member of the Quantum Community Network, which represents the European quantum ecosystem. And last but not least, Matthias Kettemann, it's been already mentioned, he's professor of law, but also director of the Quantum Ethics Lab of the University of Innsbruck. And I'm quite proud of Matthias, apart from the fact that he's my partner in crime for the last 2 years. He's also the pen holder of an expert body within UNESCO, which is called COMEST, which is an expert body that advises UNESCO. And he's the pen holder of a report, the first report of its kind on quantum ethics. And we're going to discuss governance and ethics issues, and that's why Matthias is here. So, without further delay, we're going to start with Francesca Ferlaino. We've heard already quite a bit about quantum technologies and stuff, but maybe we can go a bit deeper, and you give us a bit of an overview, because that has not been explained well, the different types of quantum technology, if you like, and the use cases. Just to give it an overview, what is the hype about?
So first of all, thanks a lot, Claudia, for putting together this incredibly nice and inspiring event. So for me, it's really a new experience, and it's extremely interesting. So Gregor Weiss, which is our speaker of the Cluster of Excellence, has already introduced, the key building block. But I would like to take this opportunity to make a step back in quantum physics and to try to really clarify something that it's very important: the distinction between language and who is speaking this language. So in a way, let's say, quantum physics is not only, let's say, a way to understand a better nature, is actually a way to understand differently nature. So it's a different language, which is called quantum language. You have German, French, Italian, English, and you have the quantum language. And then there is the classical language. They have, both of them, a very important value. But the quantum, who is speaking quantum? I'm not speaking quantum. What is speaking quantum are really the smallest unit that are building nature. One single atom is speaking quantum. One single unit of light, yes, because light has units which are called photon, they speak quantum. So these very tiny words, the word of the smallest, they speak quantum. But how can we make not only that they speak quantum in the way we want, in the way that can be useful for something? That's quantum technology. And in a way, if you think about the other language, it's very easy to understand. The other language is the classical language, which we all know is this language is what our computer, mobile phone are speaking. And this classical language is 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. It's called binary. But also there, it has to be found in the early times, something that can speak well enough this 0, 1, 0, 1, which is easy because 0, 1 is light on, light off, up, down, high voltage, 0 voltage is easier. And the object that was identified was a transistor. Nowadays, the development in this technology of transistor has been incredible. So incredible that the transistor, which are now integrated circuit, are many, many, many in our computer. To be many, 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 but our computer always smaller, 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 how can this be? So then the transistor has to be very small. How big is today the classical transistor? Well, it's almost at the size of molecule, but molecule also speak quantum. You see, there is a different paradigmatic shift that we see today. So having this in mind, the real effort today in this quantum technology is to find the equivalent of a quantum transistor, an object that can speak quantum with a lot of time, that can say what we would like they say, and that they can share this information to the other, and the other quantum transistor also understanding them. That's the challenge, because at the moment, I think there are different platform and a quantum architecture where there is quantumness, but who is speaking better this language? That's where the technological race is today. or one of the technological races today. And that's what I would like also really to, emphasize, because at the moment, one properties of atom molecule, this very small object, it's not only speaking quantum, but also to be very sensitive to whatever happens around them. Indeed, they are sensor. They are fantastic sensor. I always make this example, which has nothing to do really with quantum technology, but if I am in my lab, I'm an experimental physicist, by the way, and I look at the atom, which I put really at a very low temperature, a single atom, by looking at my atom, I can tell you where the elevator of the building is. So there is this sensing, any small magnetic and electric field that can be probed at a very exquisite level. And that's that's, let's say, the dimension of the technology that we call it quantum sensor, which are also very, very, very developed. But since it's such an exquisite sensor, a quantum transistor is also can get influenced by what is around. And that's a problem for calculation. And that's where there is an enormous amount of research trying to mitigate the eventual error due to the environment, the coherence. How can we protect this quantum object to make them that their voice is pure, is clean, is without noise? I'm putting a little bit philosophical now, but I think trying to give you this sense of what we stand. So, and at the moment we stand there, we know that there is a language which is very powerful, and we would like to use this language for solving problems in computing and simulation, by sensing, by getting a very, very good knowledge of what a second and time is, because the so-called quantum clock are extremely important also in GPS and geolocalization, and of course in everything that is related to cryptography. Those are the four, so sensing, metrology, computing, and cryptography are the four very big, let's say, pillar around which we are on the one hand developing concept regarding the language, and on the other hand concept regarding of what is the best device speaking this language. And there is not a universal answer. Depending on which problem or which of these four applications you are looking, there might be different setting. And the setting can be atom, molecule, light, or solid state system.
Thank you very much. I particularly like the philosophical way of putting it, and also explaining that we're really talking about a paradigm shift in terms of how it will revolutionize communication, sensing, metrology, and communication. And I think communication, information is really the key of everything. We see that very clearly. And I think that's a good point, or a good moment in the discussion to invite our Colonel, Colonel Daniel Hickes-Wurm, to discuss a bit the security dimension. And we discussed this before. We're going to have a deep dive on the security dimension too. It's a very broad field, and Daniel will give us an overview. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Claudia, now it works. Yeah, thank you very much. So thank you very much for the interesting and timely question. So I'm coming from the policy side, and therefore want to take it from there, from this perspective. So in the context of security and defense, we currently see exactly what you call this paradigm shift, also in the threat environment. And certain critical areas we are now consider secure will suddenly be vulnerable and open to attacks. I would therefore like to briefly address three aspects in the context of defense policy, which constitute three factors for success of this issue we are talking about here. So first, I want to briefly touch on the awareness of the relevance of the topic. Secondly, on the potential use cases and the applications. And finally, on the allocated funding for all of this. So let's start with the awareness of the relevance of the topic. So quantum technologies as a dual-use technology have gained a lot of attention in the last few years. NATO has published its first ever quantum strategy at the end of 2023. The Alliance has also selected and added quantum specialized companies to so-called NATO's DIANA. So DIANA stands for Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic. It's a program and established with this strategy also a transatlantic quantum community to strategically engage with governments, but also industry and academia from across our innovation ecosystems. The European Union at the same time has identified quantum as one of the key emerging and disruptive technologies and has launched several projects under the umbrella of the Digital Decade Initiative. For the European Defence Agency, quantum technologies are one of the main focus areas right now. So and then the other dimension coming with this awareness is now the geopolitical significance of this topic, which has only recently become apparent following the imposition of export controls by the United States in the field of quantum technology, among others, which also affect Austria. Let's come to the second aspect, so the potential use cases and application in the context of defense. Quantum advancements promise transformative changes in sensing, computing, you already named it, communication and cryptography, and they offer enhanced capabilities for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, as well as critical advancements in information security and cryptographic resilience. Many of these technological advancements can relatively easily combined with already existing systems and platforms. Secondly, quantum computing, while still developing, is anticipated to revolutionize fields requiring advanced data processing, such as cryptography, complex simulations, and artificial intelligence-driven automation. As this technology matures, it could compromise existing cryptographic systems that secure critical infrastructures and sensitive communications. This underscores the urgency for transitioning to post-quantum cryptographic standards in order to secure government, military, and civilian data against future cyber attacks. The second field, which was already mentioned, quantum sensing, for instance, represents a significant leap in precision measurement, with applications that extend from military operations to disarmament verification. This capability could vastly improve monitoring techniques essential to arms control, allowing for highly sensitive detection of nuclear materials, landmines, and other critical environmental markers. Quantum sensors also hold promise in the maritime domain, so where they could potentially expose previously undetectable underwater assets, such as submarine cables, but also submarines, posing a strategic challenge to traditional naval stealth technologies. Another one called quantum radar has the potential to nullify current stealth technology. In addition, quantum PND, so position, navigation, timing, enables accurate navigation without the need for GPS, for example. Another particularly spooky application would be quantum ghost imaging, with which you could actually see around corners and integrated visual environments. On the other hand, quantum communication, such as QKD, quantum key distribution, enables secure communication that cannot be decrypted. Let's have a brief look at the allocated funding for all of this and what programs are already out there. So in 2022, the then US President Biden signed the Quantum Research Act, authorizing new investments in core quantum research with a $3 billion budget for the US military quantum projects. What was Europe's response? So the European Commission has funded several projects over the last few years with a total amount of roughly 1.2 billion euros across different initiatives, such as Horizon Europe, Digital Europe Program, European Innovation Council, and Connecting Europe Facility. In the military sector, the European Defence Agency runs various projects, but only in the low million euro range. So for example, the ANCOR program. ANCOR stands for Advanced Networking with Quantum Communications with Operational Relevance, or QLAMPS, so quantum laser-based multiparametric portable sensors, or another one called QSEED, quantum integrated sensors for European defense. So as a conclusion, I would say, although we assess a potential disruptive impact on international peace and security, most of these applications are still several years in the future. However, the ingredients for a significant change are there. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to questions and the discussion later on.
Thank you very much. I think you gave a brilliant overview of what we can expect in terms of really revolutionizing military and defense capabilities and what it will mean for strategic stability, deterrence, and all the rest of it. But on the flip side, the quantum sensing promises real breakthroughs in disarmament, non-proliferation, and arms control. And this is another thing we're going to explore, but in a different deep dive. So, but thanks very much for the security dimension overview. Now I'd like to ask Laure to give us an overview of the industrial economic perspective. Now we've heard already from Tommaso that the ecosystem is quite advanced. But what it will be interesting for us to understand better from your point of view, because you're the president of Quantum Industries Consortium, so the association of all European industries that work on quantum or are adopting or either developing quantum technologies or are in the phase of adopting quantum technology. Where do we stand in terms of also a relative comparison with US and China to get a bit of a geopolitical understanding of where we stand as an industrial ecosystem? What do European industries expect in terms of quantum? Where are we in terms of, how can I say that? In terms of having the right instruments in place to make sure that quantum can be used for all these various use cases we said, optimization. It's going to be a real boost in terms of transforming industries. So with that, I'll give the floor to you. Give us an overview of what can be expected of the transformational potential for industries in Europe and beyond.
So many questions, thank you. So first, yeah, as mentioned by Tommaso and recently, so this QUIC is a non-for-profit association, so we call it consortium because it makes a nice acronym. The idea is really to create a network, a hub, ecosystem of all those industries. And as mentioned, we cover all quantum technologies from sensing metrology, which are pretty mature, up to, so quantum communication is part of it, quantum simulation, and computing. So, and on the computing, the hardware and software. Also including the users, also, so if we look at the members today, so a lot of SMEs, close to 60%, little less than 20% of large industry, so we talk about Thales, Bosch, SAP, etc., Airbus, and the rest is academia, research, etc. And we have several members from Austria as well, AIT, AQT, I mean, some of on the slide. So again, the idea is really to work together. We are not producing anything, but really to, as industry, to discuss of what are the, how to collaborate to, the main objective is to have the quantum technology economy, European economy flourishing, having all those industry develop on the long term. So of course we look at, we create a strategic innovation agenda, we look at different topics like, so we have also, we go by topic, we go also by transversal, like IP and trade, standardization, skills, etc. So we are not creating standards, but we are looking at what are the needs, and we dialogue with standardization bodies, etc. So and to answer to one of your questions, I would like to go a little beyond this binary view of, US and China are competing and nobody else can. If you look at Europe, we have a lot of strength and we can capitalize on this. So first, the talents. If you look at number of graduates in EU altogether or in UK, we are beyond America, China, etc. In absolute numbers, also as percentage of if you call it density, we'll call towards the population. So that's the first thing. We have a good talent. It's not just the last years or so. There is a tradition, that was mentioned before. Most of those, the scientific part of it was born here in Europe. The second aspect is in terms of all the scientific aspect, the scientific publication, we have a good share. As again, if we look at total Europe, a good share of total publications in quantum technologies, and which are recognized. It's not just having a number. The scientists, the European scientists, are recognized. Another aspect that was mentioned by Tommaso, but also there was those slides with all the countries. If you look at the total public investment, so EU plus the member states, it's a total over 12 billions, which if you compare to other countries, it's pretty good. We should not be ashamed of it. And also, we should not forget that was also mentioned by Tommaso. There are several initiatives, so it's not just about funding, it's also about helping. So Europe QCI, the quantum communication infrastructure, so helping the national infrastructure to exist, then federating those infrastructure to create the Euro QCI. So that's very important. And here it's important not just in terms of procurement, so it gives a chance of those companies to develop their product, but also creating this infrastructure to give access, etc., creating the future internet. HPC is also, so it's about HPC, but it's a joint undertaking between EU and 34 states, so EU member states, but also Norway, etc., to build infrastructure as well. So we have HPC and quantum computers, so we can, it's about procurement again, but it's about also giving access for SMEs, giving access for research projects, etc. So all, just name those, but that's interesting because it's really, helping all this industry to develop, and could help also the big, it's not just about the startups, it's also the big industry. Then, so that's really those, we should capitalize on all those aspects and build on this. Now, there are risks. So there are several risks that collectively, as QUIC members and the governing board leaders of QUIC identified, but also trying to see what could be the mitigate actions and in this way we also more or less align or support what has been suggested in Mario Draghi's report in terms of mitigation. So the first risk area is the merger and acquisition. So we see, and it's not just quantum, everything that I say until now, it's not just about quantum technologies, it's concerning all emerging technologies and even digital, for example. We have seen some cases where intra-European mergers or acquisition have been stopped or have been fighted by national interests, or how to find a way to limit those national interests and create, maybe there could be good reason, or I'm not saying we should stop systematically, but there may be cases where a merge could be a good seed for future EU champions. So how to help this, how to make sure we dialogue, we collaborate. A second risk area is, and you mentioned it, and also before this, everything related to critical technologies, so critical components. And here it's materials, but also software, etc. So here, how do we make sure that, so we secure the technologies? How do we make sure we have access to it? How do we make sure that eventually we develop in EU, in Europe in general, let's say this way, how to help those manufacturing capabilities on those technologies. And of course, we cannot do everything. It's not a question of bringing back everything. How to secure the trade agreements now in the future with like-minded countries. Funding. I mentioned the public funding. Of course, we know, and again, this is not specific to quantum. In terms of private funding, it's not so easy in Europe, and it's not just the amount of money; it's also the time. I mean, if you get the funding and then you wait for 1 year to get it, it's useless, especially for small companies. So how to making sure those fundings are, and maybe we have to look at the law and regulation, how to make sure we are not stopping, and also targeting those fundings to the right technologies. And I forget one thing, there was a fourth aspect, but again, we have all those capacity, we know what to do to really build the industry, to make sure we keep our strength, we capitalize on this, and we could be a champion in the future.
Thank you very much, Laure, for giving us an overview of this industrial dimension. And originally we had Astrid Bötticher planned to speak on the geoeconomic trade-related issues, very much related to economic security issues, but unfortunately she couldn't join us for personal reasons. We therefore said we're going to quickly ask Matthias to unpack for us that geoeconomic side of it, very much dominated by the discussions on economic security and how they influence the whole quantum technology diplomacy dimension. Maybe very quickly, because I think we are quite far ahead and we still want to have a vivid discussion, but I think we would be remiss if we don't put a spotlight also on the geoeconomic and trade-related aspects, including economic security. Matthias, would you please give us a very quick overview on that and unpack it, so to speak?
Thank you very much. Obviously, there is a huge economic potential in quantum technology. At the University of Innsbruck, not a day goes by that our university press department doesn't tell us about some new innovation coming out of our fantastic theoretical and applied physicists and the startups from our university, and the same can be said about the AIT and about the Technical University of Vienna. So the Austrian ecosystem for startups in the quantum field is very strong. And zooming out of Austria, obviously quantum technologies have a strong economic potential. At the same time, this economic potential has always to be considered in tandem with security considerations. A number of states have started to think about dual-use dimensions. Quantum-related goods, especially algorithms, are already within the dual-use regulation, and there are challenges to cooperating in endeavors with certain countries. States, of course, do not prioritize geoeconomics over security, but in light of the potentials of quantum technology, we of course have to make serious considerations how to find a good common ground between security and the importance of collaboration. You will talk a bit more about research security later on. And geoeconomic aspects should not be considered without reference to the governance aspect of it. I'll talk a bit more about that later. The economy of quantum should not be considered without the ethical value base behind it.
Thanks very much. It's relevant because, and we come now to Professor Schmidmeier, it's relevant because we had a default position in science, which was open science, if you like, international cooperation. And that's why we wanted to shed a light on and it's been mentioned also by Daniel, but also by Laure, that there is this strong paradigm to see quantum as a national security-related technology. It's a critical technology, critical to national security, but also economic security. So the sort of the default position of international cooperation is put at risk. At the same time, we heard from, I think it was Gregor Weiss who said it, no one alone, not one country, not one person, not one continent, one organization, Tommaso, can do it alone. We need the brains of the entire world to really advance quantum technology for good. At the same time, it's clear in these geopolitical difficult times that we need to protect knowledge, we need to protect technologies and all the rest of it. So there is a bit of a tension. Bit is an understatement, of course. And we'd like to discuss this with Jörg in terms of how do you see that as a scientist who's really very much networked with global science networks? How do you see the whole issue of research security, and how do we deal with this in this world?
Yeah, so, I mean, first of all, I would say that this is all, very new for us. We never, for us was always, and I think it's completely clear also what Tommaso said and what the Kamala said, progress in fundamental understanding of our nature and the science is, very intimately linked to the openness. And the openness of discussion, the openness towards ideas, and also openness towards the ideas means that many of the ideas that you have, many of the paths that you have are wrong. And you have to find it out, and you find it out very fast, or as fast as you can. Yeah? If you sit alone in your room and do your science, you might not find it out. Your friend who comes by may tell you, hey, look at it, there's a mistake, or, didn't you think about that? And then suddenly things become clear. So I think it's totally wrong to see science and progress in science and intellectual progress as something that can be done in a closed system. It will be much slower. It will be much more linked to personal flaws, to things that you follow up, yeah, and to ideologies or whatsoever. And if you look at the history of science, I think places where this openness of exchange happened were the ones where really large intellectual progress was. And it's, if you look at Vienna 1900, was one of those places. And it's not only in science, but also in philosophy, in music, and other things, where lots of really, really interesting things happened that defined basically the next century. But it was because of the openness, yeah? And now the question is that, if you want to, so how does this now deal with security, On the other hand, security wants to do exactly the opposite, Wants to say that this is only for us, yeah? And don't let anybody else know. And I think that's very difficult. So I can only say my very personal opinion is that fundamental science is to deal with things that we have no clue about. It's not something that we know a little bit and we go there. Yeah? It's something where we know nothing. And if you want to go there where we know nothing, you have to exchange with other people, otherwise you do have no progress. Yeah? It's different if we develop technology. In technology, I know it already. I know it, and I want to build it. And it's a total different aspect. Yeah? And that technology then also leads to intellectual property. And it's even more so if we do development. Yeah? And where you really take the technology and build your product and make your money afterwards. And also, if you think where were the huge progresses where science made huge contribution to society, it was always the jump from fundamental science through a small technology step to the application to go out into society. In the moment when I need applied research, I've missed the train. That's my personal opinion. Yeah? If I need applied research, so if anybody, every politician says about we have to do applied research, I think it's bullshit. Yeah? Then you miss the train if you need that. Yeah? And if you really want to be, and I think that's very characteristic for the quantum setup in Europe, is also that it goes directly from the fundamental science to the startups. If you look at the startup list, these are all people who there was no applied research in between. It just went directly to the startup. Yeah? And also the companies like Google and whatever, they went directly from the fundamental research into the things they're going to build, the machines they want to build. Yeah? Of course, you know, then you are in this interplay between science and security. I think science should be open as good as it can. Of course, one always has to think about somewhere when it comes to really intellectual property, I think one has to be careful. Yeah? And, but I think in quantum there's another aspect, which it's not only the science. I think for the moment, the progress is limited in talent. That you have talent, a pool of really excellent, educated, and innovative people. And if you talk to many of the people who now funded startups, they basically say they could do much, much more if they had many more real good people. Therefore, I think you have to attract the talent. You have to bring it in. If you say nobody can come in from this and this and this and this country, you shut yourself out. Yeah? So it's another point where you have to think about. But of course, if you bring in talent, there's another thing. You have to be ready to give them the chance to do the things here. And if you look at some of our stupid politicians, you know, the blah, 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 yeah? I think they're just doing exactly the opposite now, yeah? It doesn't help us. It wouldn't help us, yeah? And so I think that's an important part, talent. But of course, talent also means that what you have to be careful of is if talent leaves, it takes the knowledge with it, yeah? And for example, some countries now really benefit from that their citizens who lived in a different country, yeah, for 10, 20 years, who became very prominent scientists at the best institutions worldwide, suddenly don't feel home there anymore. And then they go back and take everything with. And I don't know whom you should blame. I think you should also blame the institutions there who made the situation in such a way that these people don't feel home anymore. Yeah? And so I would say if you really want to have science, it has to be open, but you have to be, your society also has to be open to let these people take part in their society and make them welcome. Yeah? Otherwise you shut yourself out and you don't, you don't get it. And I think scientists are more volatile and by orders of magnitude than companies. Everybody says a company, if your tax law is not good enough, the company will leave. If you make a scientist unhappy, he's leaving much, much earlier. It's much easier and much faster, and nobody cares about that. Yeah, I think that can become a problem in that sense here. On the other hand, what I always think of is that now the world nobody can tell me that tomorrow the world not just really drops on our head and it becomes completely crazy. Then I think it's really important that you keep channels open. And I think science the fundamental science is one of the best channels to keep open, because people have to know from each other. You should not break up everything, and you should not break these channels. I hope it never gets to there, but with the actors that we have now, you never know. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Schmidmeier. However, we have to discuss this further, because I did see some contradictions in your speech, in the sense that you sort of alluded to a difference between fundamental science and technology development. At the same time, you did acknowledge that all the knowledge comes out from basic science spins off into the ones that do the technology development. For me, and you basically alluded, yes, I can see the necessity for protecting technology development, protecting technologies, But the fundamental science has to be open. There is obviously, as I said, a tension that we have to do. But your plea for open science was not consistent in a logic in that sense.
You know,
but we're going to discuss this further, and we can discuss it now too.
I'll give you one sentence. You know, science, the open science, the CIA has access to the best science in open science in China, the same way as the North Korean Secret Service has access to our quantum science. And if the science is open, everybody has access in the same way. Yeah? Now, if it's the basic science, you know, you need to have some kind of openness. You know, we can, if we basically cut ourselves off, you know, we could have done nothing in Austrian quantum science, nothing, because it all depended on all the connections we had with everywhere around the globe. Yeah.
It is true, but it goes both ways.
Yes.
A lot of knowledge that has been created here.
I never gave a
went
recipe
out.
To solve the problem.
This is why we're here, because we want to solve the problem. But we have an analysis of the problem first. We identify the difficulties, sort of how to balance the need for protection and the need to stay open, because innovation does depend on a certain degree of openness. And as been said, nobody has the crystal ball and knows everything.
I would be very, very wary about if somebody says there's a simple solution that always failed historically. Yeah? And really catastrophically failed historically. Yeah? If there is a simple solution.
We are in the midst of a discussion. Laure, please. And then we end
also,
up with...
So another way of looking at it, in what I said, I didn't want to say that, okay, we have to stay in Europe and do everything in Europe, etc. The international collaboration is important on the industry level as well. And that's something we do as QUIC. Already we have this International Council of Quantum Industry Association, together with, was mentioned by Tommaso, QEDC in US, KIC in Canada, and QSTAR in Japan. And so it's association to association. And we have topics like standardization. I mean, if we don't have standardization, we cannot develop an industry, and there's no point to have we cannot develop separate. We have to do it together. So for the benefit of everyone. Also, QUIC recently, in addition to members who have really a European view and working on working group, we welcome now affiliates, so it's European subsidiary of US, Canada, like-minded countries again, companies in quantum technology to exchange with our members, so to have activities, several activities. One of these is standardization, another one is about talents, etc. So this, whatever form it takes, but this collaboration is important from day one. We have to look at those topics, and that will be for the benefit of everyone. We still have competition, but that's...
But that's a good point, because now we would like to discuss a bit the need for governance and ethics. So can we unpack this? Where are we in terms of international cooperation on global governance of these of the science and the technology, if you like? And why governance and why ethics? And are we at that point already? So, Matthias, give us an upshot of that dimension.
Thank you. You really put the fun into fundamental science, Jörg. That was a great background to what I want to talk about right now, namely the fundamental question whether we can learn from the way that we have dealt with platforms and AI in the last 2 decades and leverage some of those insights of what didn't go quite so well in terms of governance to make it better for the quantum technologies. And my argument would be, yes, we can. We can learn from, let's say, suboptimal normative approaches to how AI and how especially social media was regulated over the last decades, and make a better, holistic, multi-stakeholder-based governance approach for quantum technologies. As Claudia mentioned before, I'm involved in UNESCO's Ethics Commission, and we have started to work on a report on the ethics and the governance of quantum technologies. And if we want to ask ourselves, what are some of the values that quantum technologies in society and in their impact on society should be oriented towards, we don't have to look very far. We just have to look at the UN General Assembly's declaration on the UN Year of Quantum. If you look at that declaration, which is very short, 2 pages, you will see 4 references to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. You will see that the United Nations General Assembly believes firmly that quantum technologies can be and should be beneficial to the pursuance of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in their multiple dimensions. So my argument would be the following. We're now at an important point in the development of quantum technologies. A lot of potential is at the horizon, but we're still at an early stage. Now is the time to develop a comprehensive, multi-stakeholder-based governance framework that can be informed, for example, by the way that the Internet Governance Forum has been working. If you recall, the UN Secretary General, after the World Summits on the Information Society in Tunis and Geneva 2003-2005, installed this global multi-stakeholder setting discussion forum without decision-making capacity, but as a discussion forum where a discourse on global governance issues of the Internet's core infrastructure is being led every year. Why not consider creating something like that for the quantum ecosystem? Why not start pulling together the different stakeholders? This would answer a lot of the global cooperation questions. But of course, all of this has to be done on the basis of certain ethical commitments, ethical goals, ethical values. And I would argue, and this is one of the things we're working on in this UNESCO report, one of those, there are 2 key values, right? Which are both responsive to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And those are international solidarity, that is to say, intra-generational equity. We have to ensure that the way that quantum technologies are developed is fair globally, does not disadvantage the global south, allows researchers from the global south to also access quantum technology. If you think about where globally right now quantum computing capacity is located, the vast majority is in the global north. Yes, some of those computing capabilities are accessible via the internet to researchers from the global south, but still, the vast majority is in the global north. Where are standard-setting processes right now being led? Well, by organizations dominated by actors from the global north. Can anybody participate? Well, for instance, in the German DIN process, you have to pay a 1,000 euro membership fee. How many non-North organizations are going to be doing that? So I see already something which I saw in the internet field around the 2000s and in the social media field in the 2000s and in the AI field in the 2010s, namely that the normative processes which are being started have a tendency to prioritize the global north and the approaches by the global north. And that is detrimental to an intra-generational, fair future of the governance of quantum technologies. And the second key value is an intergenerational fairness. So we have to make sure that we set rules today and we develop governance frameworks today that will ensure that quantum technologies have beneficial effects for societies, for our children. There's the beautiful German word of zukunftsfest, so future-proof. We have to future-proof a governance system for quantum technology. There is none yet. There is, of course, law. There's always law. There are legal aspects that influence how research is being done, what exchanges can be made, how to patent quantum technology. That's not exciting. Well, it's exciting, but not that exciting. But we have to take a step back. We are now in a unique position, and especially, in Austria and in Europe, we are in a unique position to think about an optimal governance framework. It's too late for social media. We have, DSA and DMA and the other rules. We have them by now. They were 20 years too late. American stakeholders have basically monopolized the market. Some Chinese stakeholders are coming in too, but it's too late to fundamentally reform that. You cannot change that. But we're at a position in time where we can do that for quantum technology. And I don't think there's any other big technological thing coming within the next generation which would allow us the same opportunity. So this is really a key moment for diplomats, for lawyers, for economists, for experts in social justice to come together, to think about how to best create a global governance framework for quantum technologies based on common ethical values, based on a common commitment to pursue the UN's Sustainable Development Goals and to pursue inter- and intra-generational justice. And I think if we manage that, I think we can be really proud. Perhaps this is the moment in time that has started this all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthias, and thank you very much for touching on the capacity building quantum divide dimension that is also very much in tension with, as I said, the default position of international cooperation was open, but it's now closed by the strong geopolitical drive that is mandated by security considerations that are real. So how do we solve this tension? And I think you put the point rightly on the need for a global inclusive dialogue, and that we should not repeat the mistakes of the past, not in terms of regulation of something, but also the way we discuss it on a global scale. My good friend, Swedish ambassador here, was also at UNESCO. When I was there, we were discussing a lot about exactly that when we discussed the ethics of AI. And UNESCO positioned it really well because he said, we are the first ones where we have a global discourse, because at that time, everybody started to talk, that was even before ChatGPT, everybody was talking about AI, but where was the discourse taking place? Not on a global scale. So I think that's a very important dimension that we have to keep in mind. Also not easy to solve in the current geopolitical climate that we've been just discussing now. But that's exactly why we want to do anticipatory governance, something championed by the OECD. And I would even go further, because I would advocate for, and there are lots of diplomats among us, we need to start thinking ourselves as, of the leaders of a movement that is really futures literate. We need anticipatory diplomacy. Diplomats normally always, and my good colleagues here on the right, both Thomases know that, we mostly come into play when the harm is already done, and then we need to sort of, clean up the mess. No, we diplomats have to start thinking that we start not cleaning up the mess, but we start pushing forward to establish processes where we anticipate already the harm and the risks, and leverage the good potential for peace and security, human rights, and sustainable development. And I saw Daniel, who wanted to take the floor on this.
Sorry for that. Let me play the devil's advocate here, just for them, build on what you just said, Claudia, and referring to my colleagues on the left here. So yes, in the ideal world, of course, we need collaboration. We need an open environment. We need all of that. But coming back to you, Professor Kettemann, so I think we have, of course we have transitioned from yes, we can to MAGA, so make America great again. So we are, and I think one of the key things for us would be to accept this new reality. So with the return of this geopolitics and the national interests for decision makers on all kind of levels. So I think we need to start from there, accepting this reality and see where we can go to and what we can achieve. So yeah.
That's a very good point, where we might open up the floor. Matthias, you want to say something? Because I'm looking a bit at the time. Where are we? Ah, okay, 20 minutes. Because ideally, we're going to stop at 4 o'clock and then continue the discussion in a more convivial environment. So maybe very shortly before we open up the floor, and the floor is also open for our participants online who are on the live stream. You can also use the live chat function. Please do use it. Very keen to have your questions. So please start thinking of questions and typing them away. My colleagues are ready to receive them and read them out. Matthias? Very quickly, 1 minute, not more.
I just wanted to say, I do agree that we have to, look at reality. Obviously, reality provides certain constraints.
Which one, a quantum or the classic reality?
many realities, right? No, but if you look at for instance, the boring reality of how internet infrastructure is being regulated, the domain name servers, the role of ICANN, all of those things we don't really care or know much about. All of that is done through a multi-stakeholder process that is running independent of governmental changes, independent of MAGA. It worked under Obama, it worked under Trump 1, it worked under Biden. It continues to be working. We can still access websites, right? Mostly. So my argument would be, we have to make sure that there is a global dialogue process like the Internet Governance Forum for Quantum. Independent of that, we need to ensure that standardization processes are open that will lead to the thing that happened with regard to the internet in the 70s of the last century, namely standards that will go over the centuries, right? We're not talking about root servers too much right now on the internet, right? We are happy the way in which they're being governed. Do we know how they're being governed, even though we're all experts on technology here? Well, we can look it up, right? But we don't really care. Why? Because it works. And that's what we're aiming for, a boring solution that works.
You said simple solutions are to be mistrusted, but anyway, I have here Helmut Leopold from the Austrian Institute of Technology. I'll give you Matthias, please, thank you.
I hope I'm not just allowed to put one question, I have at least 2 sentences.
Shoot away.
Now, something which I would like to stress really. So I would underline what Daniel said, very important. We are sitting now together based on the new export conditions, and we are thinking whether we could write a paper and distribute it because we have written it in Office, Microsoft Office from the US. It becomes silly now. And I think that's no longer funny. That's a very serious impact on our economy in total. Following the second position, what we have, nobody mentioned that, we became now a second-class country. We do not get any kind of resources. Come on, within Europe, even we are compliant to all European regulatory issues, somebody decides that we are an unsecure country. That's damaging all our efforts in our economy and in new technology and research and everything. So that's a very serious situation. So my recommendation for tech diplomacy, I don't completely understand what the external affairs, but you're European and international. So I would recommend you take also your position to support our strengths, the interest of Austria, to counter-argue what it might be. I hope it was a misunderstanding. I believe one reason for this negative judgment is that US colleagues blame us that we provide technology for free since centuries to China. I believe this goes back to the free, I fully support free open research and science in the world, but of course if somebody interprets and uses it as a counter-argument for us, we have to do something. So that's something what we have to do, otherwise we are completely lost. We have no longer the problem of the South in the world, we are a second-class economic, it's really tremendous. So please, that's one objective. I understand your global diplomacy activity that we have to have at least fair conditions. Secondly, in turn Europe, as nobody mentioned, but I would like to mention, in the area of quantum communication. My statement, please prove it if everybody sees it come in a different way. We are far ahead, I believe 5 or 10 years ahead in technology development from the US and from Canada, which creates some pressure for them, I believe so. So we are ahead. Technology is there, it's no longer a technology and science issue, it's an issue, do we apply the technology? And for that, the second recommendation in terms of EU, we are still too far in the technology, science, research context. The biggest market driver for quantum communication encryption will be regulation. So if for Europe and also our member state, our political decision makers, security doesn't play a role, if it's not a problem if everybody can spy on us, there will never be a market for any startup building something. There will just be no market. So for the market of applying encryption technology, quantum encryption, we need a common understanding, and this is on a different level. So it's much more within European diplomacy, decision-making, and discussing. It's not a market argument, it's a much more societal argument. We need security, it costs something, let us build something, let us define a regulation for applying the technology. As soon as this regulation is out, the market will be there, hundreds of startups will have their market to build something, technology is out there. That's currently missing within this European framework. We have the programs out there, EuroQCI, ARISPHERE, it's wonderful. We have a lot of money out there, know-how is there, but the market is still missing, and for that we need regulation. And a new class of people have to accept us. This would be the internal diplomacy proposal from my point of view. Thank you very much.
Well, my understanding is, Tommaso already alluded to it, that the Commission is starting thinking about a quantum act. This is exactly the kind of regulation that we've been talking about, the need for holistic, forward-looking policies and strategies, and as you said, regulation, and then things will better fall into place. Thank you also very much for, again, this reality check. Indeed, the world out there is very real. It doesn't matter whether it's quantum or classic. So thanks very much for your comments. And we're working on it, I can assure you. And we'll have another coffee and I explain tech diplomacy again. Any further questions? Ooh, is it already that late? It's been quite a lot of information to digest, right? But I'm going to look over to Marta. Marta, do we have any questions from... Yes, please. Stella, can you get Marta the mic?
Thank you. One of our participants online is asking, why do we exactly need the investment in quantum technologies? And then followed by the question, how this is related to climate change. So I guess this could be related to the size of the issue of quantum related to other global challenges that we're facing.
That's a nice question, actually. But we did miss out a bit if we haven't really made people understand why, or the potential of quantum technologies for different sectors but maybe, Laura, do you want to...
Yeah, I mean, there were several use cases presented. I mean, this is one of it. That's typical example of those optimization problems. So everything related to weather forecast, climate modeling, etc., is definitely use cases for this quantum computer. And in general, this is also was mentioned before, but this is a point where, we should not just do quicker whatever we do today, but looking at what are the societal problems, what are the future problems that we could tackle, and not creating additional, using a lot of power, of energy to produce those. Could be also a way to reduce the power consumption, to reduce the energy consumption for AI problem.
Indeed, if I may add, what really excites me, for instance, and the quantum experts here, please, I stand under your control, I talk about under your control, is, I mean, what we've seen just with the announcement of Stargate, 500 billion into new data centers, and how much, the big tech AI industry in the US is driving energy consumption up because AI is crunching huge numbers of data, and the computing needs huge energy, huge water. It's actually pretty much a sustainability nightmare. And what excites me about quantum machine learning, at least what I've seen, is that you need much less data and much less compute to get better results. So there is, if you like, some supremacy, which leads me to believe, the hype that we see, the 500 billions invested over there in the big large language models, which I consider unsustainable, is maybe a big bet that maybe would just be a boom if we can get our get together and advancing maybe quantum technology. So that's for me a very, very exciting use case. Please.
Yeah, I think also in answering the question online, so in my opinion, Laura was mentioning it, there is some part of quantum technology that it's rather mature. So for example, for what is used at quantum, well, all the geolocalization that you have on your mobile phone of everybody that is in this room rely on what it's called the quantum clock. It's very easy, so if you want to know position and you want to do by using light, the velocity of light, you know it's precise, but you don't know the time. And so you need a very precise, very sensitive, a very exquisite with a very high level of precision clock. How do? You can do this with, let's say, using a quantum system. That's a kind of a mature technology. I would say that there will be very nice new idea, but I would say that's mature in the sense we are not expecting a game-changing idea in this quantum metrology, but we expect a continuous increase in this technology. There is other technology which are computer where we still need a game-changing idea. So there is one thing of the puzzle that we scientists, we don't have. Now, once we will find it, there will be no way to not make it open. So once we get this piece of puzzling idea, this piece of puzzle that still prevent us to have really reliable universal quantum computer. We don't know if this will happen, let's to be honest, or when, but we know that the piece is missing in a way, then it will be impossible to protect this idea, because when knowledge is there, it is irreversible. Another thing is protecting the development, so the implementation of this idea. And this is where I think EU has to really take a leading role to secure the technological advancement and enough protection in standardization and things. But it's very clear that there is different level of maturity, and there is not only a global answer that we can give in this type of question.
So I have a question by the gentleman in the middle, and then followed by Thomas. And yes, and this lady. Please, if you'd be so kind, introduce yourself so we know who you are.
Thank you very much. I'm Abbas Yazdani from Embassy of Iran in Vienna. And thank you very much for this meeting. Actually, this quantum science and technology is very new for me. My very first encounter with quantum, besides those movies, sci-fi movies, was when I was studying my PhD. Because I was studying international relations, and there were several articles that looking at international relations from a quantum perspective, and it's very amazing. But listening to the distinguished panelists, especially when they talked about governance, 25 years ago when I was a bachelor student, I was very I was interested in history, and when I was reading about the history of nuclear and nuclear energy and nuclear weapons, if my recollection helped me, I remember it was in 1943 or 45 that a group of scientists in New York, that was before this Manhattan Project, they discussed, and one of the European scientists suggested the same one, like, let's have an open source science, let's share this nuclear science with everyone, then we will have a global governance. And to me, when I listened to the distinguished panelists, it was like a deja vu, or something is repeating here. So, and what happened to nuclear science? The nuclear governance evolved or shifted from everything is fine except explosion to this NPT, and then now we see that even enrichment is not allowed. So my question is that whether we are going to follow the same path on quantum, or there would be some more rights for other states, or more sharing, more openness to all states, not just European or the US. Thank you.
Shall we maybe take, for the sake of time, Thomas' question, and then the lady, and then we... we'll do.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's a very interesting event. My name is Thomas Heunutz. I'm a retired diplomat and so a former colleague of Claudia. And my question goes to Colonel Hickes-Wurm. Could you give some examples in which weapon systems quantum technology is already applied today, and then also elaborate about the potential for the future? Thank you.
And Stella, could you maybe pass on the mic to the lady in the third row?
Thank you. Thanks so much for organizing this event, and it's been really interesting. My name is Marlies Hoffman. I'm from the National Coordination Center for Cybersecurity at the Federal Chancellery. And so that's also the background of my question. I was hoping to understand a bit more about the intersections between quantum and cybersecurity. It's been a bit of a topic. I think the big one is encryption and decryption. But I was wondering whether there are more risks to be aware of. So it was mentioned the censoring and the submarine cables, which clearly is very important for cybersecurity, but potentially also other opportunities, like, of course, post-quantum encryption, but also, like, what else are we missing in that intersection? Thanks.
Wow, these are basically questions for our, both questions from the military application to the cybersecurity is basically what we're going to discuss in our security dimension talk. Where shall we start? Who's going to take which question? Shall we start maybe with Daniel and the military?
Thank you very much for this very tough question. So, on these applications in existing weapon systems, so it's always a question of definition what a weapon system as such is. So it's not, for example, only the kinetic part of it. It's also the whole ecosystem, the environment around it. Yes, and we have heard about applications we are already using, for example, in our mobile phones. So like things like this are already there. So, but I'm not aware of any direct applications in the, for example, a warhead or something like that. We are seeing now big advancements due to the war in the East, of course. There's a lot of research going on and how they can, for example, navigate without using GNSS and so on. So this is a driver for it, of course. But as of now, it's more in the environment, so in the whole ecosystems of the weapon systems. Where are the potential use cases, the further use cases for this? As we have heard, so for example, the stealth technology is one of the main. It's not only I only use the example in the maritime domain, but the same applies, of course, to the air domain, space domain as well. So we see a lot of potential there, but it's a kind of race again. So there is a technology there which actually undermines the existing stealth technology, and there will be maybe a counter technology as well. So therefore, we are now entering, to some extent, I would say, this kind of technology race again, like we see in other areas as well.
I think most interesting is the part on communication and information, and the security of data is one aspect, but also optimizing, you know, as Daniel already said, command and control systems, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, and in sensing, lots and lots of applications there. Maybe just to add, I think that's one application that I heard of, which I found extremely interesting, also relating to the climate change sustainability question, is that you can basically, through better sensing, you don't need to drill. You might be able to detect, you know, raw materials or underwater. One exciting thing that I thought that we should really work towards that, detecting underwater reservoirs in Sub-Sahara. You know, it would be a boost for the right to water, the right to clean water. So a lot of things I think with sensing will be doing, but there is of course that dual use side to it. Maybe let's talk, who's going to take the cybersecurity question? Francesca?
So maybe I will not take the full question because, I mean, many of us have different competence, but you were raising, so of course you were pointing about the cyber security related to encryption and so on, that it's more, let's say, the main flow of things we know. And you were asking what else are we missing? So I don't know, we might miss many things, okay? And that's the beauty also of basic research. But one thing that is worrying me is the size of the database. So in a way, so nowadays, if you would like to encode the life of every individual on the words, you would need a huge, gigantic database to encode the life of everybody. Not to really know everything from when I wake up and I take the movie of the life of everything. But I imagine that now your database can shrink enormously because you can, store information in a much more efficient way.
Yes.
So just as an example on your question regarding cybersecurity, the German Federal Information Security Office 2 months ago published a call to all companies, including the Mittelstand, so these small and medium enterprises, to start thinking about post-quantum cryptography. This is a reality. They have to start thinking about that now. Of course, they don't do that now because they're stressed enough by the obligations under the AI Act, which they have to implement by 1 February. So this is something where governments still have a lot of communication work to do. There are a number of exciting projects. We're involved in a couple of them about quantum key encryption, quantum key exchange, which seems to offer, from a lawyer's point of view, an convincing and security enhancing alternative to current encryption protocols, but there are lots of better encryption experts here. Perhaps on the nuclear question. So I, from all the talks I've had and my experience with international law, I think there's the fundamental difference that quantum technology does not seem to have the same obvious dangers as nuclear technology has. The risks that were perceived by states in the 50s when the nuclear non-proliferation regime was established do not seem to be present with quantum technology as far as we know. So I don't see the same development happening as a conscious decision to exclude countries from access to quantum technology. What I rather fear is that if we don't consciously make sure to include everybody, to think of the global south, to include all countries and researchers from all countries in the development of quantum technology, there might be a de facto exclusion of certain countries, a deepening of the digital divide. And we really don't want to do that. Again, without repeating myself, but we have an opportunity here and now to really do better by also the next generation, by developing a comprehensive regime for this exciting technology. And also, what I keep telling my dear friends from the, who actually do the work in quantum technology, it's not about, lawyers and diplomats coming in and stopping innovation. It's the contrary. We're trying to develop a governance framework that allows innovation to take place, just without what I have been seeing in other fields that were innovative a couple of years ago, social media, AI, where we're seeing this sad tendency that companies sometimes, if left alone, tend to optimize for profit over public value, and they tend to socialize the costs and to privatize the wins. And we don't want that for quantum technology, do we?
Sounds like a good wrap-up. So I think it's about time to wrap up and conclude. So let me first thank all our panelists for unpacking the different dimensions. We've only scratched the surface. I think what we come to understand is it's quite complex. We need, as Matthias rightly said, multiple stakeholders to come into a broad, interdisciplinary dialogue. It's very clear not one single person, not one single country, continent, organization, or even discipline, so not even the quantum scientists who you said know nothing, will solve the problem. We need all to get together. All our brains need to get together, and this is the start. We want to have that discussion with all of you. And we want to at least explore these tensions. We've touched upon a couple of tensions that come up in this geopolitical realm of technology, and quantum is just one of few. We have several critical technologies that have this special capacity to create tensions between different interests and different, I'd say, global public goods. And I would consider, peace and security and equity and solidarity among those. But the security question is a reality, and we have to take this serious, and we have to see how we can navigate in a very smart, sophisticated, and calibrated way. So we want to do it right, as Matthias said, and we don't want to do it now because things are so fast. If we wait, there's a good saying in German: if you wait too long, what is it? Who waits too long will be punished by history. So we in the Foreign Ministry want to be not punished by history. So we invite you now for a glass of wine. We are going to take the glass of wine and some snacks in the press room. We cannot, and I have to insist because I was told by our administration, we cannot have snacks and drinks here. I suppose because this is a historic building. This is one of the most beautiful historical paintings that you find in the world. So, Coke is not the thing that we should put on these walls. So we invite you to have a drink, and we continue discussions. We invite you also to stay tuned. We're going to roll out throughout the year further deep dives, further tech diplomacy talks to unpack the different dimensions we've touched upon briefly today and explore further, maybe further dimensions that we have not yet touched upon. So thank you very much for your participation. Thanks very much, everybody online. Look above in the sky. So now let's have a drink.